Welcome back to the channel, it's Jack here, and this is the Insta360 Link, a 4K gimbal mounted webcam with AI tracking and smart gesture control for both Mac and PC. Now, full disclosure, Insta360 did send me this for free to review, but this video is not sponsored by them. And I've been testing it out for the last few days, and I've got to say, I've been really impressed by its features, particularly by the video quality. The tracking, it follows you really well as you move about a space, and all of the different shooting modes and features which I'll show you in this video. I think that it's the ultimate all-in-one webcam. So who is this actually for? Well, Insta360 are marketing this towards business professionals who are often in a lot of video conferences, or people working from home using Zoom and Microsoft Teams, online teachers and lecturers, be it for live classes or ones being pre-recorded, as well as streamers and broadcasters. The camera can also rotate into true portrait mode, making it perfect for posting or broadcasting live to Instagram and TikTok. And I agree, I think that with all of its features, for anyone that falls into those groups who is looking to up their production quality and make their video conferences or classes more engaging, then this is something that is well worth considering. I'd also say that it's for content creators like myself or anyone who's looking to get into it. I already have some ideas for how I want to use this for my video production, and I will share those with you later. Or it's just for anyone who wants a top quality webcam for using with FaceTime or Skype with your family and friends. It really outdoes my MacBook Pro's built-in camera in pretty much every aspect, as you'll see. And you can still use those tracking features and gestures within those apps too, which is pretty cool. There is also a free companion app, the Insta360 Link controller for both Mac and PC, with a load of settings and options for tweaking how the camera looks and works so you can fine-tune it just as you like. So I'll show you some of its top features and some comparisons with my MacBook Pro's camera, but first let's take a look at the design and specs so you can get an idea for how this neat bit of tech works. So I was actually really surprised when unboxing it at just how small this is. I was kind of expecting it to be this big bulky webcam like from back in the day, but at roughly 7 centimeters tall and around 4.5 centimeters wide and deep, it sits really elegantly onto my MacBook Pro. It has a hinged clip on the bottom for easily mounting to your laptop or desktop monitor. It actually sits perfectly where the MacBook's notch is, but you might want to mount it just to the side to avoid covering the ambient light sensor, which could cause some screen dimming if you have auto brightness enabled. Plus it has a 1/4 inch mounting point on the bottom for tripods. I'll show you some uses for that later in the video. The camera boasts an impressive 1/2 inch sensor with 4K resolution up to 30 FPS and 1080p up to 60 FPS, with an f1.8 aperture and phase detect autofocus. And this thing totally blows the MacBook Pro out of the water in terms of video quality. This is how the FaceTime HD camera looks at its maximum 1080p on the MacBook, and this is how the Insta360 Link looks at its maximum 4K. And the difference between them is pretty staggering, I think. I'm in a really well lit room as well, but on the MacBook, it just looks kind of noisy and muddy looking. I guess it's just the limitations of a built-in camera in such a thin enclosure in the lid of the MacBook. The Link looks so much crisper and clearer, and that's thanks to that big image sensor and the 4K resolution. And it also has phase detect autofocus too, so you can hold something up pretty close to the camera, as close as 10 centimeters from the lens, and it will focus on it. And it does prioritize faces, so if you come back into shot, it'll focus on you. But yeah, it switches between focus really quickly. And that's great if you want to maybe show your audience and products. Maybe you want to get into product reviews or content creation, as are the DeskView and the overhead modes, which we'll see later. And for a low light comparison, this is how they both compare. I've turned off all the lights in here, apart from the ones behind me on the shelf. I am still being lit from the front from the MacBook screen, which is at 50% brightness. But again, I think it's pretty obvious which one is the winner here. The MacBook is really struggling now. It just looks like a blotchy mess. Whereas on the Link, you can still see all the detail in my clothes and in my face, and that's thanks to that f1.8 aperture. It's mounted on this 3-axis gimbal, which you can manually control, or use the auto tracking and have it follow you around the room. And this is really cool. Think like Center Stage that Apple first introduced on the iPads. Apple uses an ultra-wide camera and then crops in to track a subject. But here, with a physical gimbal that actually moves, we get that tracking at full 4K resolution without any loss in quality. It has a really wide range of movement, over 180 degrees, panning from left to right to cover a large space. You can also recenter the gimbal at any time by double tapping the front of the base. And within 10 seconds of inactivity, the gimbal points downwards and goes into privacy mode. The top of the base has an LED strip that can flash and change colour to give you a nice visual confirmation when you're using some of the smart gestures we'll see. And as mentioned, it can rotate into true portrait mode, perfect for Instagram and TikTok. And just as important as video quality is of course sound. The Link has dual noise cancelling mics on the front to really focus on your voice and filter out any unwanted background noise. Now earlier I did switch between the mics when I showed you the video comparison, but once again this is how the built-in mics sound on the MacBook Pro, and this is how the mics sound on the Insta360 Link. I do think that the noise cancellation on the Link is a little bit strong. There aren't any settings in the controller app for audio quality like we have for video, so I would like to be able to either turn off the noise cancellation or at least tweak it and dial it down a bit. Apple's done a lot of work in recent years to really improve the sound quality of their built-in mics, and I do think that they have the edge here. The Link sounds absolutely fine for using in video calls, but as I'd say with any camera, pair it with an external microphone to get even better sound quality. Just for a comparison, this is how it sounds with my Rode VideoMic NTG that I usually record with. On the back we have a USB-C port for connecting to your Mac or PC. In the box we get stickers for Whiteboard mode, we'll see how those work later, a lengthy 1.5 meter USB-C to USB-C cable, a USB-C to USB-A adapter, plus a warranty card and a quick start guide. Now to take full advantage of all of its features, you'll also need the Insta360 Link controller app, which is free to download for both Mac and PC. As I show you some of the features throughout the video, I'll show you some of the options that you have for each one, but just as a quick overview, the app is really plainly laid out and really easy to use. On the left we have the preview window of what the Link sees. Along the bottom we have some toggles and settings to do things like turning the preview on or off, a menu to select our resolution. There are 4 buttons for enabling tracking, whiteboard mode, overhead mode and desk view. You can also enable those first 2 using hand gestures. A screenshot and a record button for recording in the controller app. On the right side there are 3 tabs. Gimbal control for manually controlling where the camera is pointing using the on-screen joystick, the arrow buttons, or by simply dragging on the preview. You can also set and save up to 6 preset positions to quickly move between some set shots. That's really cool and really useful if you often use the same setup or you want to keep showing your audience something that you can quickly jump between with just a click. Under image settings we have auto exposure and auto white balance. These were enabled for those comparisons earlier, but you can disable them and set them as you like. So for me I would set my ISO to 100 to minimize noise, and my shutter speed I'd put at 1/60, double my 30 FPS frame rate so I get that nice smooth motion blur. You could go down here if you want and draw an exposure curve, but to be honest I think it looked fine as it was, so I'll just reset that. Then I would disable auto white balance and set it to 5200 Kelvin, as that's how I have my light set up in here. And then at the bottom we have 4 more sliders for brightness, contrast, saturation and sharpness, and you can set those as you wish. And then you can click Save as Preset to remember those settings, but I can't find a way to save more than 1 preset, so that's something I'd like to see added, so you can have different presets for different shooting setups. But if you don't want to use manual settings, you can just leave the Link in auto and it does a great job on its own in all sorts of different lighting conditions. Then under the last tab we have more settings for enabling or disabling the smart hand gestures and AI zoom, options for how fast you want the camera to track and follow you, settings for auto or manual focus, a toggle for streamer mode which allows you to select a portrait resolution and have the camera rotate into portrait mode, and a toggle for HDR. The Link can do HDR at up to 1080p 30 fps. This is how the Link looks in 1080p with HDR turned on, and this is how the Link looks at 1080p with HDR turned off. And here's a side-by-side comparison so you can see how both look. Personally, I think that it looks great with HDR disabled, and I would rather have the 4K resolution when I'm recording. But let me know in the comments which one you prefer. The AI tracking and gesture control really sets this camera apart and makes it so much more dynamic than just an ordinary built-in camera. There are 3 simple gestures. Holding up your palm enables auto tracking, And now the camera will track you as you move around. It's really responsive and it tracks my face really well, even when it gets a bit obscured by some of my stands here. You can set the tracking speed under the More Settings tab. Personally, I like to use the slow setting for even smoother tracking. It still keeps up even if I move quickly. You can stand up and move around the room. I am quite tall at 6'1", and the camera is mounted on top of my MacBook, which is on a pretty normal height desk, but you could mount it higher on a tripod or on an arm using that mounting point on the bottom, and you want more of a level eye line with the camera. Also, under the More Settings tab, you can also enable the AI zoom, which automatically crops in to either a headshot, more of a mid-half body shot, or lastly a whole body shot. If I choose headshot, it automatically crops in as I move back to maintain that framing. The next gesture is the zoom control gesture. For this, just make an L shape with your hand, the LEDs will blink, then just move your hand up a little bit and hold it there, and the camera will then start to zoom in until you put your hand down. To zoom out, make an L shape again, and then move your hand down just a bit, and the camera will zoom out. It can be a bit finicky when you first try it, but once you get used to it, it's really simple and intuitive, and it works really well when combined with the auto tracking and you're standing further back from your computer. Just make sure that your hand is in the frame. The last gesture is for something really pretty cool, and that's whiteboard mode. You'll probably notice that I've got a whiteboard behind me, and if I make a V symbol with my fingers, the link will recognise the gesture and then start to pan around the room, and it looks for a whiteboard. Then after a second, it will crop in and fill the screen with this really cool perspective for your audience. And this works using those 4 stickers that come in the box that I showed you earlier. You place one in each of the 4 corners of the whiteboard, and as long as the link can see just one of those, it will find the others and it will then crop in and show your audience exactly what's going on. This is great if you're in a meeting and you're trying to share ideas, or maybe you're a teacher and you're teaching a class, or you're just sharing your to-do list with everyone on YouTube. Really cool feature. The gestures work really well for the most part. It rarely fails to recognise them. Just make sure that your hand is visible within the frame and that you're not covering your face as you do them. It makes it really easy to interact and control the camera when you're stood back from your computer. In desk view, the camera points down at a 45-degree angle towards the desk and corrects the perspective, so now you can share some notes or review some documents in a video meeting. Or maybe you're a designer and you're sharing sketches with your team. It even rotates the image 180 degrees so that the viewer sees what you're doing the right way around, which is really clever. Please don't judge my terrible handwriting and drawing skills. And then in overhead mode, the camera will point down 90 degrees for a top-down view. For this mode, you will need to mount the camera to a stand or a tripod and then angle it downwards so that we don't see the base in the shot. And now we have this distortion-free overhead top-down view. And again, this is great for showing your audience some notes or doing a demonstration, or even if you're someone thinking about starting a YouTube channel, you could film some unboxings or some hands-on videos using this. Enabling the streamer mode unlocks the portrait orientation resolutions for shooting in true portrait mode, but this might not work with some video conferencing software, and that's because a lot of those apps like FaceTime, for example, don't accept 9:16 vertical video, only 16:9 horizontal, but it's still great for recording content for Instagram or TikTok. You can also use the link with streaming software like OBS to broadcast live to Instagram or TikTok. And yes, the tracking and gesture controls do still work in portrait mode, perfect if you're streaming solo and you need to keep within the frame. To use the link with FaceTime on a Mac, make sure that it's plugged in and that streamer mode is disabled. Then in FaceTime, click video from the menu bar and choose Insta360 link for the camera and the microphone. And that's it, you're ready to go. You'll also find similar options in the settings for things like Microsoft Teams and Zoom. But whatever video calling app you're using, as a tip, you can click this icon in the top right of the controller app to shrink down the UI into this handy toolbar for easy access to a load of the options while on a call. The gimbal control and your preset positions, the different shooting modes and all of your image settings too. That's really useful and it always stays on top. So that is the Insta360 link and its top features. I really like this thing. I think that being able to move around the room while it tracks you makes it a great tool for anyone wanting to create more engaging video conferences or classes. as well as using all of those different shooting modes to show something down at the desk in front of you or some notes on a whiteboard. I used that in a FaceTime call to show some friends and they thought that was so cool. And then there's the picture quality with that 4K sensor. It is leagues ahead of what you can get on most built-in laptop cameras. It's just so sharp and so crisp. It's so good that I think that it makes this so much more than just a webcam for calls. I think that a lot of content creators will really like this too, especially if you're making videos solo on your own like me. If you saw my iPhone 14 Pro Max unboxing, I had a 2-camera setup with my A7 III as an overhead and my iPhone 12 as a face cam, but I had to use the lower quality front camera on the iPhone so that I could check that I was still recording and see the framing and make sure that I stayed in shot. I kind of wish that I had the link then so I could use the tracking and not have to worry about it. Plus the video quality would have been a lot better with that too. So I'm going to be trying that out next time I shoot a video like that. And I'm going to be using this for all of my FaceTime and video calls going forward. I think it's great. There are a few small things that I think would make this even better though. Being able to save multiple image presets for image settings would be nice. Having options to choose specific frame rates in the controller app too, unless I missed it, I couldn't find that. And having keyboard shortcuts for entering certain modes or jumping to some preset gimbal positions, that would be pretty cool. But all in all, the link is well worth checking out if you're serious about making some high quality, engaging experiences on your video calls or for your YouTube videos. I think that it's the ultimate all-in-one webcam. I'll put some links in the description for you to have a look for yourself. Let me know in the comments what you think or how you'd use it. I'm really interested to know. Hit the like button if you found the video helpful and make sure to hit subscribe and the bell to see more tech videos from me. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.